The final getaway. In November 1856, John William Gibbard was hanged for a murder he insisted he had not committed. Gibbard claimed innocence to the end, finally declaring that, though he would die, no grave should ever hold his body. He was buried near the prison in an 8-foot deep grave, and a cairn of rocks was built up over the spot. In addition, the governor was worried about attempts being made to exhume Gibbard's body to rebury it in consecrated grounds. So he placed his official seal on the coffin and ordered armed guards to watch the grave day and night for 3 months after the execution. But only 6 weeks later, the real murderer was discovered, and this person had also been the chief witness against Gibbard in the trial. Clearly, a grave miscarriage of justice had occurred, and the governor and the prison were quick to try and make amends. Gibbard's name was cleared, and his mother was given a lifelong pension, and Gibbard's corpse was ordered to be exhumed and given a proper burial in a graveyard. The grave was opened, and the seals checked and confirmed to be intact, but the coffin was empty. The body of John Gibbard was never found. The story of John Gibbard's paranormal escape from the grave is actually based in fact. There really was a man named John William Louis Gibbard who was hanged for a murder he did not commit. But this Gibbard died in 1822, and his body most definitely did not vanish. The story of his death, however, served as the starting point for the inventive and false legend of the Vanishing Curve. Deja vu in green. In 1965, author John Maclean reported a truly weird event, one for which he assured readers he had sent documents, reports, and witness testimony that proved the event occurred. In August 1887, Maclean stated 2 children, a boy and a girl, were discovered in a shallow cave near the village of Bandos in Spain. The children did not speak Spanish, wore clothes that appeared to be made from a metallic cloth, and had green skin. Though the locals tried to care for the children, the boy sickened and died soon after the discovery. The girl lived 5 years past her discovery, and her skin gradually became a normal tone. After she learned enough Spanish, she said she and her brother had come from a land with no sun, that everyone there had green skin, and they lived in perpetual twilight. She never was able to explain how she and her brother had somehow traveled to where they had been discovered from their own land. But Maclean's tale was just a retelling of a truly mysterious event that occurred in Woolpit, England in the 13th century. All the author did was change the time and place of the events to create a new paranormal account. Ironically, some later researchers claimed that Maclean's story proved the Woolpit story must have happened, since there were so many similarities. The Woolpit event, however, was one of a kind, and it remains a mystery to this day. Reference warning. A story is often told about Lord Dufferin, a very successful English diplomat who was publicly well known and liked. On holiday, Dufferin and his wife stayed at a friend's home in Ireland. One night while there, Dufferin saw a strange man carrying a coffin across the garden of the house. The man lifted his head and looked directly at Dufferin in his upper story window. The man's face was so indescribably ugly that Dufferin was struck, incapable of looking away or reacting. The strange man soon disappeared into the depths of the night, but Dufferin was left with a horrifying memory of the man's visage. Years later, Lord Dufferin, now England's ambassador to France, was at the Grand Hotel in Paris for a diplomatic reception, waiting for the elevator. When the elevator opened, however, he immediately stepped back. The elevator operator was unmistakably the same man who had terrified him so long before. Dufferin, instead of entering the elevator, headed for the front desk to ask what they knew of the strange man as the doors to the lift shut. But before Dufferin could ask, the elevator came plummeting back down the shaft. A catastrophic failure in the lift crushed and mutilated all about it in an instant. The strange, ugly man, whom the hotel could not identify or explain, had saved Dufferin's life by scaring him away from the fatal lift. It's a spooky tale and a satisfying one, because it presents a great story. But there's a big problem. In Lord Dufferin's lifetime, there was only one known elevator failure in Paris that resulted in people dying, and it took place at the Grand Hotel on February 24, 1878. There were only 3 people involved, the elevator operator and 2 passengers. All died, but none were mutilated, as it was the shock of the impact that killed them. And no contemporary accounts of the matter mention any sort of official functions in the hotel at the same time, nor mention Lord Dufferin. Heaven help us. In 2001, an inspiring story spreading through email eventually found its way to Facebook and other social media. Apparently, Diane, a young Christian university student home for the summer, was walking home after dark. As she was taking an alleyway shortcut, however, she saw a man standing at the other end as if he was waiting for her to get close. Worried, and she prayed to God to protect her from harm. And a comforting, warm feeling enveloped her, and she no longer felt as if she was walking alone. When she reached the end of the alleyway, she walked right past the man who did not bother her. The newspapers the next day told that a young girl had been raped in the very same alleyway, just 20 minutes after Diane passed through it safely. Diane, concerned, and contacted the police, and was asked to look at a lineup of suspects. And sure enough, one of them was the man who she had seen at the end of the alley. When pointed out, he fully confessed, and when asked why he had let Diane go, he responded because she wasn't alone. She had 2 tall men walking on either side of her. The story has since been reprinted often as proof of heavenly protection, ignoring, of course, that it was presented anonymously in email to begin with, and that the town it happened in is never identified. Under the circumstances, someone could argue that while there is not any proof it happened, there also isn't any proof that it didn't, except there is proof the story came from somewhere else and did not have to do with angels at the first time around. In 1938, in an article in the journal Folklore, a woman identified only as Mrs. D explained that her mother often walked between the neighboring villages of Scunthorpe and Crosby in Lincolnshire, England. One night while Mrs. D's mother was making this walk, she became aware that she was being escorted by a very large black dog that she had never seen before. The friendly animal was just passing along next to her. As it turned out, this proved to be very helpful, for as Mrs. D's mother passed some idle laborers on the road, she heard them discussing what they would have done to her if that dog hadn't been with her. As soon as she got home, she called her husband to meet the wonderful dog that had saved her. Only the animal had vanished. Jump forward 63 years, make the dog a pair of angels, and you have the story of Diane. Out of time. In June 1950, the New York City morgue received the body of a man who had been struck and killed by a car. He was quickly identified as Rudolph Frenz based on the contents of his pockets, but that did not prove very helpful. Frenz was dressed head to toe in clothing that was about 70 years out of date, with a star-stuffed collar, buttoned shoes, and a top-5 hat. His pockets contained about $70, but in banknotes rather than in bills, and none of the coins in his pocket had a date newer than 1876. His business cards gave the authorities his name and an address on Fifth Avenue. He also had a letter that was marked for delivery to the same address. But that address was a business, and no one there had ever heard of Rudolph Frenz. No one came to the morgue or police looking for Frenz either. According to drivers, Frenz was first seen standing with a stunned look in the middle of a busy street. He was hit when he suddenly tried to run for the curb ahead of the cars. The police eventually discovered something they did not like. There had, in fact, been a man named Rudolph Frenz in New York City. According to a very old police reports, he had gone missing mysteriously one night in 1876. Had Rudolph Frenz somehow traveled through time, only to die on a modern city street? Though the tale of Rudolph Frenz has been told with fantastic detail of many authors, many claiming to have photos of Frenz, the story just is not true. The events and details all originally came from a short story written by a science fiction author Jack Finney and was published in a 1951 edition of Collier's Weekly magazine. Someone must have liked the story because soon after publication, the tale of Prince's time trip was taken from it and became an often repeated true tale in British paranormal literature, eventually appearing in multiple web pages with faked photos.